أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب.
Hadith number ولأبي داود والترمذي, the extra narration. ولأبي داود والترمذي نحوه عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها وفيه كل سورة في ركعة. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite these various surahs, one in every rak'ah. وفي أخيرة قل هو الله أحد والمعوذتين. And in the final rak'ah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would recite قل هو الله أحد والمعوذتين. This narration which mentions والمعوذتين in the last rak'ah, it is also da'if. A person can recite whatever of the Quran he wants to. فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Recite whatever is easy from the Quran for you to recite. But if one wants to stick to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it was سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, second rak'ah, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, and in the third rak'ah, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ only. Hadith number 306. وعن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أوتروا قبل أن تصبحوا رواه مسلم. ولابن حبان من أدرك الصبح ولم يوتر فلا وتر له. Hadith number 306, dealing with the time of witr. We saw in previous ahadith that the time of witr salah begins after Salatul Isha and it ends at the time of Salatul Fajr. At the time of Salatul Fajr, that's the final time for your witr salah. There is no witr salah after the time of Salatul Fajr had come in. The time of witr expires at dawn. So the first hadith, أوتروا قبل أن تصبحوا, perform Salatul Witr before dawn, before the time of Salatul Fajr. What happens if, for example, a person overslept and he was supposed to wake up for witr salah and he missed his witr salah? He had awoken with the adhan of Salatul Fajr. Can this person make qada of Salatul Witr? The answer is yes. If it was your norm, if it was your practice every night to perform Salatul Witr, then it is allowed for you to make qada of your witr salah when? After sunrise. After sunrise, 9-10 o'clock, you can perform qada of your witr salah. But there's just one thing to take note of. That if you would pray 3 rakats of witr salah at night, then when you are making qada of your witr salah, you should pray 4 rakats of salah. If you will pray 7 rakats of witr salah, when you are making qada of it, you finish it off on an even number and you pray 8 rakats of salah. So it is allowed. The Prophet ﷺ, he himself at times, he had missed his witr salah and he had made qada of it, but he ended it off on an even number. Hadith number 307. وعنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من نام عن الوتر أو نسيه فليصلي إذا أصبح أو ذكر. نعم, this hadith and the meaning or the explanation has already preceded. من نام عن الوتر, whoever slept over his witr salah, he did not awake on time. أو نسيه, or he had forgotten about his witr salah. فليصلي إذا أصبح أو ذكر. Then he should perform this witr salah, make qada of his witr salah when he awakens, when it is the time, when it is now morning, or whenever he remembers that he had missed out his witr salah. He can make qada of his witr salah in the morning after Salatul Fajr, after sunrise. In reality, after sunrise, a person can make qada of his Salatul Witr, but he ends it off in an even number. Hadith number 308 and 309. وعن جابر رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من خاف ألا يقوم من آخر الليل فليوتر أوله. Whoever is afraid that he would not be able to wake up in the last portion of the night, then let him perform Salatul Witr before he sleeps. وَمَنْ طَمِعَ أَنْ يَقُومْ آخِرَهُ فَلْيُوتِرْ آخِرَ اللَّيْلِ. And whoever feels that he will be able to wake up in the last portion of the night to perform his witr salah, then let him perform it at that time. فَإِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ آخِرِ اللَّيْلِ مَشْهُودَةٌ وَذَلِكَ أَفْضَلُ. For verily, the salah during the last portion of the night, it is mashhuda. It is witnessed upon the malaika around you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends to the lowest heaven and He asks, who is there who requires some assistance? Who is there requires me to forgive him? Then ask from me, then I will forgive this person. So it is better that the person wakes up and he performs his witr salah, his qiyamul layl, tahajjud at the last third of the night. But if he cannot, then he performs it before he sleeps. And then the Prophet ﷺ in hadith number 309 had stated, وعن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا طلع الفجر فقد ذهب وقت كل صلاة الليل. That when the time of Salatul Fajr comes in, the time of Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud, Witr Salah is all over. والوتر فأوتروا قبل طلوع الفجر. So perform your Witr Salah, your Tahajjud Salah, your Qiyamul Layl, etc. before the time of Salatul Fajr, before Tulu' al-Fajr. And this hadith also gives us the indication of the expiry time of Salatul Witr, Qiyamul Layl and Tahajjud. All of this ends when the time of Salatul Fajr enters. Hadith number 310. وعن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الضحى أربعا ويزيد ما شاء الله. رواه مسلم. وله عنها أنها سئلت هل كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الضحى؟ قالت لا إلا أن يجيء من مغيبه. Hadith number 310, dealing with this voluntary prayer termed Salatul Duha. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, in the first narration, she states that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would pray Salatul Duha. How many rak'ats? He would pray 4 rak'ats of prayer. And in the final narration, she was asked, did the Prophet ﷺ ever pray Salatul Duha? And then she had stated, no, except if he had come from a journey, then the Prophet ﷺ would perform Salatul Duha. The scholars have differed a lot with regards to Salatul Duha because of the differing amongst the Sahaba. Was this a constant practice of the Prophet ﷺ? Would he only pray it when he came from a journey, etc.? And because of that, many of the scholars had differed. Majority of the scholars are of the opinion that Salatul Duha is established and Salatul Duha is recommended upon every single Muslim. As the Prophet ﷺ had stated to Abu Hurairah, the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ advised him with 3 matters. Told him that do not sleep except until you have prayed Salatul Witr, and also never ever give up Salatul Duha. And Salatul Duha is this prayer that a Muslim prays during the early portion of the morning, after sunrise, around maybe 9-10 o'clock. When the sun is now hot, a person would pray Salatul Duha, and the time goes up right up to Zawal. From the time after sunrise right up to Zawal, that's the time of Salatul Duha. So we see that number 1, Salatul Duha, inshaAllah, it is something which is recommended. The Prophet ﷺ in a hadith recorded by Imam al-Hakim stated, لا يحافظ على صلاة الضحى إلا أواب, that nobody holds on to Salatul Duha, looks after his Salatul Duha, except a person who is recorded as being from the Awab. Awab means the person who returns, the person who turns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why another name for Salatul Duha is Salah al-Awwabin. It is prayed at maybe 9-10 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, when every person, most people, they are gone to their jobs, they are gone to work. This person turns back and he goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he prays Salatul Awwabin or Salatul Duha. A person can pray 2 rakats, 4 rakats, 6 rakats, 8 rakats, whatever number of rakats a person wants to pray, and there are great rewards for this person who prays Salatul Duha. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith recorded by Imam Muslim had stated that a person every single day should give out some sort of sadaqah for every limb and every joint that he has in his bone, in his body. And Salatul Duha is that type of sadaqah that suffices the sadaqah for the entire body, for every joint and for every limb. Hadith number 311. وعن زيد بن أرقم رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال صلاة الأوابين حين ترمض الفصال رواه الترمذي. This same Salatul Duha, as we mentioned, is also termed Salatul Awwabin. The time for this Salah, Salatul Duha or Salatul Awwabin, after sunrise right up to about the time of Zawal. The best time that a person should perform the Salah is, as we mentioned, Hina Tarmadul Fisal, that when a young camel, a young weak camel, very young, just born, maybe a few weeks, when this camel now feels the heat of the sun, maybe sun rises at 6 a.m. When it's now about 7 a.m., 7:30, it's really getting now hot. So this young camel cannot take the heat, and so it wants to go into the shade. Around that time, that's the best time that the Muslim should perform Salatul Duha. Hina tarmadul fisal. That's when the young weaned camels feel the heat of the sun, that they require taking the shade. And so we see that this is the best time for Salatul Duha. It's also called Salatul Awwabin. Why Awwab? Awwab means that this person has now turned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this person who performs this prayer at this time, he is going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.